because basically December we spent dealing with steenhuis. Outcome of steenhuis in 15 January. That outcome was follow the disciplinary process. We're not going to go the motion of no confidence. February this year, we spent with a council motion of no confidence that failed on the 15th. March, early April, we dealt with the 2 disciplinary inquiries. Now I know we said they were driven into the sand, but the real reason for that is because Mr. Lille from the outset insisted on an open hearing before an independent commission. And she says she wants that, otherwise she can't clear her name, and we've got a whole lot of examples of what happens in those disciplinary inquiries that are completely unacceptable and you've got no chance. That is what she says. That was March 22 and April 3. You'll recall there are 2 disciplinary, one we call the UBAR panel, the other one is the Wilmot panel. That was March. Now in April, the reason why that second disciplinary started, the UBAR resale, is because on 7 to 8 April there was the Federal Congress. And it's at that Congress in the beginning of April that the recall clause was adopted. You'll recall that. From then on we see the implementation in April of the recall clause. I think on the 16th there's the DA, the city decides to adopt the internal motion of no confidence and so on. Now I'm going to get closer just by way of background to the events that I'll be dealing with. On the 2nd of May, we make our representations regarding the recall clause. And it is in those representations that we inter alia have 5 individuals that are identified, which we say are biased. Inter alia. Get back to that. When does this cessation clause business start? It is on the 3rd of May, the Thursday, in the late afternoon, without any warning, without any inkling that this is going to happen. Mr. Horn shows up at the mayor's office. Not normally, we deal with each other by way of email. He emails Mr. Riley, the attorney, always emails in terms of disciplinary hearings. So he just shows up there and tries to hand over the letter. Mr. Lille says, I don't want to take it, send it to my lawyer. For some reason he thinks it's incredibly important to hand it over right there and then because she's only got 24 hours. That's the Thursday afternoon. Friday morning there's letters that get exchanged about who the panel is that's going to deal with this and so on. And we make our submissions within the 24-hour period on the Friday afternoon. That Saturday, the 5th, the DA decides that in light of the papers that they got, the draft papers that we submitted on the 4th, they are not going to go ahead with the implementation of the recall clause because that's now referred to from legal advice. So it's the 3rd, the 4th there's the exchange of letters and the submissions. The 5th, on the Saturday, they decide to abandon the recall clause. Then sometime over the weekend, and you'll see that we make a lot of the fact that it's abnormal the way that the DA drafts their affidavits because they never tell the story. But sometime over that weekend, a lot of things happened. Sometime over that weekend, the panel was given the interview, or a transcript thereof. They sat, they deliberated, and they must have had at some point a finding, because their finding isn't dated, before the Monday, the 7th. Because that Monday evening, from the 7th, FedEx accept the determination of the FLC panel. And then we find in the next morning, 7:52, that there's the communication to Mr. Lille that she lost the membership with reference to 3.5.1.2. So it all takes place within the scope, really the Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. That's 5 days, and the communication the next morning.
Mr. Gerard, is it possible to go back a little bit? When what stage did the complaint become a complaint?
As I understand it, the DA's version is on the 2nd of May. Ms. Kupane referred the complaint, and I think that's also clear from her email with respect to these. Her email doesn't lodge a complaint, we say, but on the 2nd of May, she sends an email saying that there's apparently this interview in which she resigns. Reflects an intention to resign.
Complaint, or was she seeking an advice from?
Yes. No, clearly she was seeking advice. She doesn't lay a complaint. No. That's what we say on the face of it. She says she's seeking advice on this interview. So, if I may then go to the PAJA, I actually made a note here to us, Justices, whether there's any part of the background that you may want to hear me on, because the affidavits may go back right to the beginning of the whole dispute in July 2017. And I don't want to repeat it here, I don't think it's necessary. The relevant events occur on the 5 days. For you now, going to PAJA, if I can take you to our supplementary bundle at page 1. And we're dealing with the question of PAJA because there is, of course, a difference between PAJA and the rules of natural justice in this sense that if PAJA applies, the decision of the FedEx and the FLC has to be reasonable. There's, as far as I'm aware, no duty under natural justice to act reasonably, whereas PAJA has got that wrong. Justice is not a difficult interpretation exercise because there's a lot of law, and we submit the answer is fairly clear. If one looks at the administrative action definition in PAJA, it means any decision taken. Now, if I can stop there, you can go over the page 2, to the definition of a decision. One sees that it includes, under round brackets A determination. A decision includes a determination. And our courts have already held, I'll refer you to it later, that what the FLC does and what FedEx confirms is a determination that that public declaration falls within the clause. So it's got to be a determination. So it's a decision taken, and the relevant one is B, by a natural or juristic person other than an organ of state when exercising a public power or performing a public function in terms of an empowering provision. Empowering provision over the page, again defined, includes an agreement. An empowering provision includes a contract and an agreement. Look at its definition. So there's no difficulty that it's a decision in terms of an empowering provision. The only question is it the exercise of a public power or the performance of a public function? On that score, we included in our heads several cases. I'm not going to take you through all of them. I want to focus on one or two, but what is a good analysis, I would submit, and I'm not going to take you there, Justices, but the National Horse Racing Authority decision of His Lordship Mr. Justice Wallace, and particularly paragraphs 17 to 29. And you'll find it in our bundle. That case in B, page 11, paragraph 23 in particular. And I'm not going to take you there, but it is a very good analysis of how this Jockey Club case is developed and why they consider it to be subject to administrative law principles. I want to take you to the article directly in point, which is an article written by Lisa Thornton, former clerk of the Constitutional Court, came here in 95 and so on. She wrote an article on the question before you. Is a decision to expel a member of the party administrative action? I want to take you to two passages of that article of hers. And the first one is at our supplementary bundle at page 28. at page 28. And in that paragraph, page 359 on the right-hand side, at the top of the page, you got that, Justice?
Yes.
She says there, now she's talking about the jockey club cases. She says the reason that these institutions have been treated as public institutions that they wield power. They can and do act coercively. Their action has similar, if not more far-reaching effect than that of public institutions. Administrative law principles are designed to protect us from the exercise of that power. This is why we would submit that it also applies to political parties. They wield power, and we are entitled as members to be protected, especially if you're public representatives. They can unilaterally amend their constitutions. It's not an ordinary contract where the one party must consent to an amendment. They can unilaterally amend it, introducing, for instance, the recall clause and so on. So that's why it's called a unique contract in Ramakatsi. Furthermore, they can give discretions to their structures, to their leadership in that constitution that impact them.
Can I ask you this, Mr. De Lille? Do we have to go here if the DA says that within its own constitution stipulates they have to act fairly and reasonably?
Lord,
and whether we apply Paja...
If your Lordship is with us on the point of natural justice, then you don't go near Paja. That's it. But it does become necessary to go to Paja if we're not right at the 24-hour period, the reverse onus, all these things that the rules of the FLC has built in to make it easier, that you've got to provide clear and unequivocal reasons and so on. If those arguments fail, and it becomes a question of whether it was a reasonable decision, then one does need to go to Paja, because I can't find the duty to act reasonable in natural justice. And that's why I'll go quickly through these Paja things now. I won't repeat them again when we're dealing with natural justice, because the arguments are very similar. So it's also state-funded parties to some extent. So one creates an unequal situation, an unequal contract between member and party leadership. That's our first submission, they wield this power. Then over her last page, if I can take you to page 34 here, she ultimately concludes as follows about whether the decision to expel amounts to administrative action. Page 34 on the left-hand side of the page, second from the bottom. On the other hand, there are certain acts which would fall within the definition of administrative action when the actor is a political party. One such act, I submit, is the dismissal of a member of a political party where such member is a member of parliament or a legislature.
Excuse me, I've lost you. Where are you now?
So on the left-hand side, page 370, numbered page 34.
Oh, got it, thank you.
The effect of such a dismissal is not only that the member is no longer a member of the party, but also that the member is also no longer a member of parliament or legislature to which he belongs. In these circumstances, the party is exercising great power over its members. And we would say it's public power, almost a public function. Let's also remember, in the present case, of course, there's a further knock-on. She's not only losing her status as councillor, but as mayor, and then the MACO dissolves, etc. So the knock-on effect clearly brings it in within the performance of a public function. But there's a different point that I want to make now, apropos what Justice Sher was saying, the Lordship Justice Sher was saying this morning. And it involves this question of whether these parties are not really exercising just their autonomous rights. It's autonomy of the parties, they can decide, elect parties and so on. And to this extent, I did go back and look at the system applicable in such party political democracies, where it's you voted in on proportional representation and what the position is. And if I may hand up what I found in that regard, just be it turns out I was involved in, almost forgot about it, in the book Rights and Constitution. It was 1994. And it deals with the position in Germany. And the argument that the respondents keep on making is to say that Ms. De Lille is trying to cling on to her position as mayor of office, but nobody voted for her. The party should be allowed to decide whether she's a member or not, because the public voted for the parties. My learned friends, in their heads of argument, referred to a lot of articles and also some cases coming from the US. Now, of course, that is not a safe guide, because in the United States, the parties can't get rid of you. The people vote for you. The people, they can't get rid of Mr. Trump, even if they want to, the Republicans. The public have voted for him, and if you're expelled from a party, it's got no impact on whether you're generally a member of the House of Representatives, whatever. What is the position in a comparable country? And now this submission cuts across the partial point and also the duties on the parties. If I may take you to number page 87 here, on the position in Germany, and of course Germany is the same. It is a country where you vote for the parties, proportional representation and all of that. What have they got? How does it work in Germany? And you will see there at page 87, under the internal order and the publicity of a party's financial affairs. It says that the basic law interferes with the freedom of political parties to regulate their internal affairs in two ways. Parties' internal organization must conform to democratic principles, and the parties must publicly account for their funding. Then it goes on to the internal order, and it says that the rules which govern the internal order, there's 3 lines down, must meet the democracy requirement in the following ways. And then we go through a whole number. But you will see finally, just before the bottom of the page, exclusions from the party may not be arbitrary. Thus, while total fidelity to the party program may never be required, the party may have a disciplinary organ which may exclude those who do not subscribe to the party's ideal. Then you'll see in the footnote, the reference, footnote 163. The footnote refer there to the Parteiengesetz, the Party Act, Political Parties Act, that says that Section 10.4 determines that a member may be excluded only if he or she intentionally contravenes internal rules, requirements of loyalty or solidarity, or if he or she rejects the fundamental beliefs of the party. Then, most importantly, the contraventions or rejections must be significant and serious damage must result in the party. So they've realized that in a system where the party determines whether you can be in parliament, effectively determines whether you can become mayor, because you have to be picked off their list in order to be the mayor, or placed on their list first and then selected from that list to run for mayor as well. The parties effectively determines the composition of the legislature. They're the intermediary. They determine who gets removed as well through this disciplinary process. One has to exercise control over how the parties do this. That's why in footnote 2 up there, they have also provisions dealing with how the lists are composed. So the point that we're making is, in the Paja context is, and it would be good to have such a law, and we can get rid of all of these party constitutions and stuff, and there's only this Political Parties Act that govern the situation. But until that time, when it comes to disciplinary processes, one has to reach a point where Paja becomes applicable, where we have a standard then in terms of which we can measure what these parties do. And from that moment on, it will be a bit ironical because, of course, they like to hold government to account to all of these principles in Paja, but is now trying to resist that same discipline. But the point I'm making is it cannot be purely contractual. Because when they exercise those powers to either compile the list or to expel a member, they are exercising public power
But
which must be subject to some public law. Yes, sorry.
No, in terms of the point that you would like to press, isn't it so that once a person joins a particular political party, ultimately it's his or her choice? And surely that upon joining that party, one accepts those rules and regulations that are within the constitution of that particular party.
No, absolutely. Yes, no, that's so. That's one right that you have. You have a right and you've got a duty to obey the constitution. But non-constat that one can't place another layer over that relationship, and I'll refer to the case now because maybe I should do it right away. It is not purely contractual. Yes, that's the starting point. By joining, I'm subjecting myself to the contract, even though it can be amended unilaterally and so on. It doesn't necessarily follow that public law doesn't protect me when I become a public representative and a mayor, and I can't demand that Paja must be respected when they expel me, because then the party exercises a public power. So in many instances, it would only be the party's constitution. And this is why Thornton and all the commentators say, many instances when the party, I don't know, decides how to have a congress or what other non-public powers is not covered by Paja. May I just refer in this context to one of the judgments that we deal with? Well, I'll get there. I'll get there in due course. Now I want to deal with...
surely, Mr. De Waal, and now we're going into the realm of politics in the true sense of the word. If there's a fallout amongst members within that political party, and there's all sorts of dynamics playing itself out, and now the party wants to get rid of a person, surely the party can use its own internal mechanism and its own rules in order to bring them out in a situation where they want to get rid of a person.
Yes.
The difficulty is, did they comply lawfully with their own constitution and with the rules?
We say no, my lord, but we also say, for the reasons that I'll go into in more detail now, that you need to create another level of fairness. A party can't have a clause in their constitution that says if you wear red, you can only wear blue if you're in the DA. No red, no, or even how it deals with its disciplinary processes freely. It can't just write whatever rules it wants to.
No, but on that score, if you sign up and say we're only going to wear blue, and you exercise that choice to only wear blue, now you decide one morning, now I'm going to wear red. Then the party says, but listen, you sign up and now you're choosing another color to wear.
That would be the case, my lord, if we're talking about the bridge club or the... That's certainly. But when we're talking about political parties dealing with a question about who should be in Parliament, who should be recalled from Parliament, we are not talking only about a private power that can be exercised purely... That's the argument.
Yes,
so, Marais has been mentioned by your Lordship, Mr. Justice Sher. May I just take you... Of course, in Marais, just to begin with the background, is of course that at that time, Mr. Marais was in a dispute with a party. It started off, you will recall, with renaming of Adderley Street and Wells Street. And then there was all sorts of mechanisms employed by the DA against Mr. Marais for those actions. But if I can take you to the bundle at page 21 to begin with, because in Marais, the DA was arguing that the dismissal of Mr. Marais is administrative action. They were arguing the opposite of what they're arguing in this case. If you go to page 21, in our old bundle, sorry.
Sorry, that's the bundle.
The previous bundle. Yes, the AA bundle. What does the DA argue in that case? They're arguing this somewhat opportunistically because it's argued in order to bring them into Paja in order to say, well, now, Mr. Marais, you haven't exhausted domestic remedies. At paragraph 55, at page, sorry, not paragraph 55, just at page 21, paragraph 40.
Yes, we do.
The respondents, that's the Democratic Alliance, averse that PAJA is clearly applicable in the present case, inasmuch as decisions by the NMC should be regarded as administrative action as defined. This includes any decision taken by a natural or juristic person other than an organ of state exercising a public power, performing a public function in terms of an empowering provision, which adversely affects the rights. And then they go on to what I just argued, what the meaning of a decision is and an empowering provision. 41. In the present matter, the respondent averse it took decisions in its capacity as a juristic person which directly affected the rights of the applicant. In doing so, it was exercising a public power, performing a public function in terms of empowering provisions contained in its constitution. It was not dealing with internal administrative matters. This regard was warranted on behalf of the respondent, arguing that the provisions of PAJA renders it unnecessary to determine the common law for the purpose of establishing the meaning of the handling of public power. Any event is submitted the decision having the effect of removing a public representative from his office manifestly meets the general test enunciated for that. How is this dealt with by Justice Van Zyl? Now I'm coming back to this argument that is raised all the time that Marais determined the power. Marais said it is not ours. That's the end of the story. Over the page, if you go 2 pages further at page 21b, and bear in mind that Justice Van Zyl, he's writing his judgment. It's in the first bundle, Justice Van Zyl, maybe that's the...
Is it page 21?
21b, you don't have?
No, we don't have.
I still have it up. Yeah. Sorry. Marais, unfortunately, wasn't a full case, wasn't copied. Sorry, Justice. I might hand it up. So just bear in mind that Justice Van Zyl is ultimately going to help Mr. Marais under the rules of natural justice. He's dealing with a point of Mr. Gauntlet for the DA that this is partial and you have to exhaust your domestic remedy. Then at 21b, paragraph 55, what does he say? Why is this not partial? It follows that because the NMC was not empowered to take a decision to remove the applicant from his office as mayor of Cape Town, its first decision was ultra vires the respondent's constitution and hence invalid. Inasmuch as the second decision, namely to terminate the applicant's membership of the respondent, arises from the applicant's failure to comply with the first decision, is equally invalid. Then the more important clause, clause 7.6.4 presupposes a valid decision of an official structure of the respondent. Failure to comply with the invalid decision cannot create a ground for termination of membership, as envisaged by clause 7.6 of the respondent's constitution. Neither of the decisions can hence be regarded as administrative action as defined in PAJA. So what he's saying in old terms, or the new terms, is you haven't complied with the contract. It's a nullity, your decision, in other words. It doesn't comply with the principle of legality, and therefore it's not partial. It's not necessary even to go there. Paragraph 58 on the right-hand side again explains why he says on the facts of this case there was no decision in terms of PAJA. Just at the bottom of paragraph 58, by the same token, the decisions were not of an administrative nature, he says, as required by the definition of a decision in section 1 of PAJA. They were patently political decisions instigated and initiated by the political judgment of the respondents. In my view, therefore, the provisions of section 72A of PAJA do not apply. So it was decided on the facts of that case, really, that in the context of that particular decision that was considered to be a stratagem of a political nature, it doesn't comply with the PAJA requirements. And then he gets into the rules of natural justice, where he clearly says, as I'll deal with later, is that 48 hours is never enough, manifestly not enough, to respond to the charges that was made against Mr. Marais in that case.
So Mr. De Lille, are you going to get to Caliber Clinical Consultants and the judgment of the SCA in Sandpark? You're going to
Yes.
get to that?
Yes. dispositive of the issue, then Van Zyl could never reach the opposite conclusion of His Lordship Mr. Justice Van Reenen. And if you look at page 51, the right-hand side of the page, he deals with respect step by step with each requirement of PAJA. And we're dealing here with a decision to recall. The first part deals with a motion of no confidence, but this is the decision to recall Ms. Van Zyl because she participated in a demonstration here in favor of Mr. Morkel, at that time not in favor of breaking away from the DA in order to join the ANC in the commission. So paragraph 75, Justice Van Reenen deals in terms with the concept of exercising a public power. He says there's no statutory definitions of the concepts exercising a public power and performing a public function. Accordingly, one has to have recourse to the dictionary definitions. And he looks at the shorter Oxford Dictionary and he says, in the context means belonging to, affecting, or concerning the, in the context means belonging to, affecting, or concerning the community or nation, and power means the ability to act in a particular way. On the basis of the dictionary definitions of the constituent components of the context, exercise and conveys the ability to act in a manner that affects or concerns the public. And then 76, in my view, the exercising of the authority to recall a permanent delegate of the NCOP constitutes the exercising of a public power. The conclusion is based on the exercising of such authority as an influence on how the NCOP, the delegation of the respective provinces, and the joint committees on which the delegates may serve are constituted and may affect the manner in which those bodies perform. Now, that's clearly the case here as well. It determines how the council is constituted, Ms. De Lille or not, whether she's mayor, and how Mayco is constituted. He deals then in Van Zyl 2 pages on with the concept of what right, because you recall it must be the exercise of a public power which affects rights. Now, what is the right affected? And you'll find that at page 53, on the left-hand side of the page, 1190. And I'm not going to read through this, but you'll see he links it directly to section 19.3 of the Constitution, and that is the right to hold public office. He says this is the right affected by these decisions. And of course that right, standing on its own, can be decisive of the case, because you would have to have some kind of a good reason to terminate the person's right to hold public office and follow a fair process. Paragraph 86, it deals with the question of whether the decision has direct external legal effect. Again, it's a final decision, and in accordance it does have such effect. Over the page, it deals with the question of whether it's a power of an administrative nature. Page 89.
Yes, I assume it's paragraph 89.
Paragraph 89, sorry. Yes. He again finds it an administrative type of decision. It's not an executive decision. It shouldn't be a political decision. It's an administrative type of decision. So he then reaches the conclusion that all of the requirements are met. And with respect, there's no way of distinguishing Van Zyl. Your lordships want to find that, lordship lady wants to find that it's not falling within PAJA, then Van Zyl must be wrong. Moving on to some judgment that is wrong. It is Andrew's with respect. We're not going to try and distinguish the Andrew's judgment. The judgment's been acting Justice Manson. We submit it is wrong and should be overruled.
Because we are encouraging that point that you highlighted, paragraph 89.
Yes, the paragraph 89 is the last.
You're referring to a definition of the decision.
Yes, I will come come to the definition of a decision now because that's something addressed in Andrews. But we would submit that the situation is as follows as far as the judgments of this division is concerned. One has to say that Marais didn't decide this issue for all purposes. It was dealing with a very particular type of decision that was clearly outside of the bounds of its constitution, and it then said that this can't be administrative action because it was a political decision and something that was invalid. Directly in point, however, is van Zyl. My learned friends not going to distinguish van Zyl, they've got to say it's wrong. We can't distinguish Mansing AJ's judgment in Andrews, we say it's wrong. And you can't reconcile van Zyl with Andrews.
But it seems that the difficulty I've got is with the argument is this. The moment a person belongs to a political party and that person holds public office, whether as a mayor or a councillor or sitting in the NCOP or otherwise, it means that despite the internal disciplinary requirements that might be there in their constitution, that will not be good enough anymore. What you're arguing is that if one opens this up to PAJA, then it means is that there's a slightly more different hurdle to overcome by political parties in order to use the disciplinary inquiry. It's no longer just an ordinary, simple disciplinary inquiry in terms of their own constitution. It goes a step higher because PAJA is now applicable because these people hold public office.
Yes, my Lord, and what a great result it would be, with great respect. Because we sit with this
obviously
situation.
for your client. Yeah,
no, my Lord, just generally. And if I go into legal policy for a moment, what is wrong with PAJA in the context of disciplinary hearings? What is it that's so difficult to comply with? Bearing in mind that if a party say our constitution simply has one sentence, disciplinary inquiries are conducted in terms of PAJA. That's what they all do, and because they don't want to have layered, difficult contractual provisions to comply with, and then plus PAJA. Just have it all done in terms of PAJA, and it would be a good result for the parties. Firstly, because now your obligations are defined. There's law that you go and look at that interpret those provisions of PAJA. But the best of all is, ultimately, there's a discretion in PAJA. As your lordships know, if there's a reviewable irregularity, there's a discretion that the court has got to say, despite the fact that I found that there's irregularity, as a remedy, I'm not going to set aside.
But should court get involved with political parties' internal issues?
No, except when they exercise public power. And this is what everybody is saying. Otherwise, the members will put their lives at stake, or their reputation at stake, become public representatives, all of those things. And they have a right to hold office. It's not the party's right to hold office. It's a person's right to hold office. And we're talking about a violation or a limitation of that. Then we would submit that PAJA gives the perfect set of parameters, reasonable, lawful, procedurally fair.
So I'm not sure that I follow. You're saying only if you hold public office? So the ordinary member is excluded, but someone who holds public office is included. Now, is that fair? So if you're an ordinary member, you don't have the benefit of PAJA, but if you're a mayor or a member of parliament or councillor, you do. How can that be logically consistent?
Because the one doesn't have an impact on the public law if you exercise it. It doesn't affect the public if an ordinary member is expelled in the same way that it affects the public when that's why Thornton argues when it comes to public representatives. It's the same as joining the party and not being selected on the list of the party, for instance, to become a voter. It's different. Similar, we would say, submit that it would be...
Just before you step off that point, Mr. De Lille, so in short, if parts applied, the court has got a discretion, and say, for instance, that the court comes to a conclusion that the rules of natural justice may or may not have been substantially complied with, but now it wants to use its discretion. So, despite the fact that 90% of a member, or 90% of the party, members within a party, dislike, for whatever reason, a particular member, that party must still comply and keep that member within that party because the court exercises discretion.
Yes. Of course, we don't know. That's why we say that it's a bit, to speak about the DA doesn't want there's a debate about who is the church.
Never mind the current difficult situation that we've got, that we have to decide on, just in the ordinary course of events.
But Lord, of course, if you go purely contractual, there is no discretion. If the rules of natural justice were not complied with, that's a contractual right that my client has got, and you can't then exercise discretion. Discretion is only triggered to the extent that PAJA applies.
Yeah.
And this is why it would be a step in the right direction, we would submit, by saying to parties, the time has come that you adopt the simple set of rules and principles contained in PAJA. There is an advantage for you here, because I must bring a review within 180 days, I must exhaust the internal remedy. Thirdly, the court has got a discretion. Fourthly, there's a body of law that's developed around PAJA. Instead, what we have, and we'll get closer to the German system that I've referred your lordships and lady to, where there's this body of law that's applicable to all political parties. In this case, PAJA, in their case, they call it the political parties. Instead, we have all parties dealing with things differently, coming up with the most strangest automatic cessation clauses. And really, they aren't clauses. They're clauses that keep on growing as well. And my client, Mr. Lille, has made the argument. Every time Congress passes new automatic cessation clauses and stack them up around the public representatives. This is the kind of thing that one must avoid and have a standard that's applicable, and that standard must be PAJA with respect. And now I just want to deal with the arguments that Justice Sue has already raised with my leader. Is it a decision? Isn't it an operation of law? Isn't it the invisible hand
I think that's what your opponents contend. They say this operates by law.
They rely on these automatic resignation clauses or constructive resignation clauses come from a provision in the Educators Act that said that if a teacher is absent for 14 consecutive days, then you're deemed to have resigned.
But
all of these clauses come from, that's Finiti's case, as your lordship will see.
But here you have a situation where, as I understand the rules, if there is a suggestion that someone has contravened this clause, there's a process that has to be then followed. It says you then must make a complaint. The FLC then puts to the member concerned that ex facto some audio clip or some statement you appear to have performed an act which brings you within the ambit of the clause. Now you must give reasons. Within 24 hours, then a panel must be constituted, and the panel must then make a determination.
Yes, quite right. And it's if I may just take you to one case on the point that I've just handed up. I just think it's a case behind the German stuff. It's a case called the African National Rights. It's marked from page 88. It's behind the extract from Rights and Constitutionalism, and just one paragraph in there. Because this is, of course, a problem that is not it's not, if I can take you to number page 93.
Where are you going to? Bundle B or bundle A?
It's a new bundle. Sorry, my lord, the Rights and Constitutionalism is at the front as I have it, and then it goes on to page 93.
Yes, I've got it now, page 93.
So of course, the DA's got to accept that, because otherwise we can contend Mr. Maimani isn't a leader anymore. Look at that article. Van Damme isn't there anymore. They've got to have a process in terms of which there's a complaint, a determination, and an acceptance of that. Otherwise, people will constantly say, no, you lost your membership in 2015, that one, and that kind of accusation will constantly be there. This is what happened.
Can I ask you this? Until a determination is made, is there in fact a cessation of membership?
No. This is their version. It can't be.
Because there's got to be a determination. That determination is in turn subject to confirmation by the Federal Council or FedEx, as I recall. The Council can decide, it says may. The Council may or may not agree with the determination. So, as a matter of law, is this a case where just because you made an utterance, ex post facto, just that in itself constitutes the end of your membership, or is there some other process that has to be gone through and then the determination? When does your membership cease? When do you say your membership ceases?
What the DA, we would say it ceases, but it can't cease retrospectively as they said it.
Yes.
It ceases after the FedEx confirms that they accept the determination of the FLC.
Because FedEx can decide not to, for whatever reason.
Yes.
It says may.
No, of course. And it's at that point where the mitigating circumstances must come in. That's where they should have said to you, we now see here that there was such an act of yours, tell us where you drunk, etc. That's a bad example. Or what we believe that this is a very harmful statement. Why?
But didn't you have that right? Didn't you have that right before? You got told this is the act that we say causes your cessation. You must now give us reasons as to why. Isn't your audio alterum part there?
It is there, my lord. But what about mitigating circumstances? Because as you know, and we will get there.
But this is not a disciplinary process. Why do there need to be mitigating
Because I've got a right to submit that there's mitigating circumstances in terms of their constitution. And in terms of fairness just generally. One would expect, if you're going to be expelled from a party, to be able to mitigate and say, you believe this is an act of disloyalty, let me explain. Yeah. No, I'll get to the mitigating factors right there too. But just for a moment, and I just want to refer you to this one passage, because this has happened to the DA before. And it happened in George, where Mr. Lont, in that case, of course resigned. This is a floor crossing case. So he resigns, and he's then, and his affidavit that you'll see as part of our papers, given some money and persuaded that he should come back. And the question now arises, but you publicly declared that you resigned. Now then you can't change your mind.
So is this one with the letter that wasn't opened?
Yes. There's a Supreme Court of Appeal judgment, but this is a judgment, a quote, that's not part of our papers by Acting Justice Irish. At page 93, paragraph 23. And he refers to Henderson and says, what the learned judge held was that once the disciplinary committee had established that Henderson had indeed been convicted of a crime such as envisaged in the federal constitution, there was no need for further investigation, since ipso facto, the party was entitled to terminate its membership by virtue of that fact. It seems to me that the circumstances of that matter are far cry from the argument that Mr. Borgstrom advanced the determination of membership and the resultant ward vacancy in George would then result from a current ex-lege. It is clear that it still required a determination by the relevant political party concerned and a communication by that party after determination of membership to the relevant council. Who sees there? Yes, you come along and you say, well, look, he is no longer a member of the DA in terms of the own constitution, but it does require the party to follow its own process. That merit in that point then, with respect that it can't be under parja because there's no decision. It's the invisible hand that suddenly, like in the constructive resignation cases, the 14-day absence. Now, just a final point before dealing with aspects of PAJA. The interrelationships between public law duties and private law duties now running concurrently is a bit difficult conceptually, at least for me to understand in the Sandbox case. And I would like to refer your Lordship's lady to one part of it in our supplementary bundle at page 64. Justice Cameron explained in Lockville how these duties can run concurrently quite easily at page 64 in our supplementary bundle. It starts off with Lockville, and this is what is envisaged by us here as a conceptual answer to the page 64, paragraph 23. The SCA, this is the Sandbox decision, refers to Lockville, then paragraph 24 on the right-hand side of the page.
So that's where we're going to leave it for the time being. That's proceedings taking place in the Cape High Court, where Patricia De Lille is taking on her party against unfair, they're trying to dismiss her. And of course the proceedings that took place last week, where her powers as mayor were heavily curtailed, and that's being deliberated upon. We'll go back to there a little bit later on, but first let's catch you up with some weather.
Process was obliged to act lawfully, procedurally and fairly. In consequence of its contractual rights, such as the entitlement to give no reasons, would necessarily yield before its public duties under the Constitution and applicable legislation. This is what we envisage. To the extent that the party wants to adopt, overused word perhaps, but draconian powers, wearing red, you lose your membership, all sorts of nonsense in their constitutions, that would then yield before their public law duties. Because that's what happened in Lockville to some extent. The tender conditions imposed on the bidder have then becomes contractually bounded to. Provisions which were clearly unfair, and a layer of public law duties, public law rights have been imposed. If I then could go to the substance, why was PAJA not compliant with? And I'm now dealing with this as well as the rules of natural justice at the same time. Was 24 hours enough? Adequate notice in terms of PAJA and rules of natural justice?
Your client didn't complain it wasn't.
She did, little.
It was too little.
She did say that I don't have enough time. For instance, to do, if I may take you there to her representations.
Well, speaking for myself, logic and common sense dictates that under these circumstances, 24 hours appears to be too little time.
My Lord, particularly because there's no prior warning, particularly because there's absolutely zero urgency. What is the urgency? We know they say that these things are inherently urgent, but can it be inherently urgent when you're in a dispute with someone for, we say, 9 months? This way, that way, it goes. Disciplinary process, it's recall. Now suddenly you show up on a Thursday afternoon, late afternoon, unannounced, and say, here's a letter, and you have to respond within 24 hours. And Mr. Horn is frantic in having to explain you've only got 24 hours. It doesn't say this, you can ask for more time or anything like that. So, if I can just, Justice, Your Lordship, Justice Sher raised this issue of her submissions at page 130, paragraph 8.3. Well, she says, of course, in 8.2, the clause was not implemented.
No, you're going too fast for us now. Page 130.
Page 130 of the first bundle.
whatever.
Sorry, that's the court papers.
The pleadings bundle. Yes.
I'm going too fast. The court papers, as she says, is the interim papers.
Yes, we've got all there.
So it says, she says, paragraph 8.2, the clause was not implemented in a procedurally fair manner, nor is the clause capable of being implemented in such a manner, which it says. You can't implement this thing in 24 hours. I was not timelessly furnished with the names of the members of the FLC panel appointed to consider this matter, so they can assess whether they're biased against me or not. Now bear in mind, this is 2 hours before she's got to submit the reps.
Well, I hear what you're saying.
This is accordingly placed in dispute.
Well, I hear what you're saying, but you know, if you look at you start at page 128, 129, there's an explanation given. She sets out her version of what happened and why she says that clause doesn't apply. Nowhere is it said in express terms that I haven't had enough time, I need enough time. If you give me more time, I'll be able to put further information. She says you didn't give me the names of the panel. That's what was first asked for. That's what the complaint is about the time. But I'm not sure that
she got the names of the panel. My Lord, she says she hasn't had time to look at them carefully to find out who they are, whether they're potentially biased. And we know that some of them are biased. At least one must be. Mr. Mokhalap, because he is part of the Jubair DC that's dealing with a disciplinary charge of which my client was already acquitted by an independent investigator. Anyway, that's...
There's no argument about bias on these papers. There's no point taken that the proceedings are vitiated because of bias, as I understand it.
No, it is taken.
But that isn't... That,
I'll get to it. It's in part A already.
Part A?
Yes.
Not part B, as I understood.
Yes, it is pertinently raised, the 5 individuals plus Mr. Mokhalap.
But how does that go back to the complaint that the 24-hour period wasn't enough? She doesn't say anywhere in this letter, you know what, I can't meaningfully defend myself, I need more time, this is not fair. She doesn't say that.
And it's not a question, if I can take you to the 2 cases dealing with this aspect, they didn't go to Mr. Marais or Mr. Bataisen and say, please tell, you should have raised this issue. You should have said, I need more time. You should have said, I'm not going to participate now. I'm not going to put anything to you. If I can take you to begin with, the case of Marais that I've already dealt with, but just on this aspect, at page, it's part of the new bundle that I've handed up. I'm sorry about this, but it's in the Marais matter. Yes, it's at page 21E, at paragraph 78. Paragraph 78. Now, he's asked to respond in 48 hours. Paragraph 78. The applicant's response in the letter dated 18 October 2001 from his attorneys to the NMC, calling for further particulars and requesting a postponement of the proceedings arranged for 19 October 2001, illustrates a difficult situation in which he had found himself. He had, in effect, been afforded only 48 hours within which to prepare and present a case to counter the motion tabled against him. This was manifestly inadequate notice. And then again, paragraph 84, at the other side of the page, the last sentence, the motion was carried barely 2 days after the applicant had been appraised of the intention to table it at the fateful NMC meeting. This is certainly not the stuff that fair procedure is made of. The undue haste within which the NMC carried the double-barreled motion was totally unjustified under the circumstances. Similar here, there's no justification for the 24-hour period at all, nothing. It is understandable that the respondent wished to deal with the matter as soon as possible. At no stage, however, was there such urgency that the motion required to be steamrolled to the NMC in the way it was. While paying lip service to the applicant's right and fair hearing, the NMC gave him anything but a fair opportunity to prepare and present his case, as he was perfectly entitled to do. There it's found that there was a non-compliance with the principles of natural justice. Similarly, the other case that we rely upon, which is in our first bundle, which is the Matheson case.
But Mr. De Waal, despite the fact that there might have been only 24 hours, which, according to your argument, was patently unfair to your client, was there anything different that you would have said that hasn't been said on paper?
No, we deal with it at length. We've got 9 points that we point out in the heads of argument that you would be dealing with, that you had more time. We're dealing with a point of bias. We're dealing with, to begin with, just to set out the law in that period. Because you must now bear in mind that she gets it on the Thursday afternoon. She can't just pick up a phone and say, lawyers come work through the night now. So we have the submissions in. You first have to then find time to speak to lawyers and to get this all together. So she does deal with it in the founding papers, I think, or at least in our heads of argument, we stipulate. I'm not going to take your lordship, I'm going to come back there in detail what would have happened and where she thought that she would have had to supplement her submissions. But we know these papers are not what they are because they're completely unnecessary. If she could describe the full picture, I'll get to the other requirements as well. She wanted to present argument, for instance, reference to case law and so on, what she would have done. If I may just take you to the Matheson case, because Matheson is also an automatic cessation case. And the court deals with the judgment of Ladyship Justice Goliath, and it's in the first bundle. And if I can take you there to page 61 of the first bundle. That just describes the automatic cessation clause that the ACDP invoked in that case. So what they did was they said, you are joining a group that are calling for a special meeting of council, and at that meeting you want to get rid of the mayor, etc. We're giving you a notice now to say, withdraw your support. We're suspending you on the condition that you withdraw, and if you withdraw your support for that special meeting within 2 days, then the suspension falls away. Otherwise, you're automatically expelled. Failure to do so will lead to the vendor's immediate expulsion and dismissal.
Yes, but that was contrary to the party's constitution.
Yes.
The constitution provided for a disciplinary process. They went ahead and didn't follow it. So,
with respect, my lord, the process was followed in Matheson to the T. But what has Justice Goliath found? Was it enough time, the 48 hours that was given Matheson, to respond? And remember, he's not required to respond to anything. He's just required to respond to withdrawing his support for the special meeting. That's what he's required to respond. You get 2 days. You'll see, applicant was instructed to withdraw his request for a special meeting and a motion of no confidence by 5 o'clock, which he failed to do. The applicant was then suspended on condition that he should withdraw the request, which he had failed to do. Hence, he violates his suspension condition, hence automatically expelled. What does she say about the fairness of that process? And if I can take you over to page 62, paragraph 28, the last sentence. I'm in agreement with the applicant that the period of 48 hours given to him to respond to all the issues raised in the suspension notice was unreasonable. But that was only one issue. Applicant was not given sufficient time to prepare and present his case to avert a possible expulsion. He doesn't ask for time. Over the page as well, page 63, last sentence of paragraph 30. Not only was the applicant given insufficient time to deal with all the issues in the suspension letter, but also the manner in which he was expelled was unfair and not consonant with the principles of natural justice. Must be borne in mind that the termination of his membership was a drastic measure which would effectively deprive him of his seat as income as councillor, and then she refers to Adi Alton Parton, and it shouldn't be DK, I think it's DK's case. And so, again, 48 hours considered to be insufficient, manifestly inadequate in the race case. That's our first point. But what about the second requirement of PAJA and also rules of natural justice, which is the opportunity to make representations? Were we given an opportunity to make representations, apart from the time issue? And we would submit not. Because what happens here is, as we pointed out in the papers, you are asked to make representations on the clause, then the FLC sits in some kind of a process. They are being fed these cases, all singing of the same hymn, those cases. Henderson, cases like Andrews, cases which all supports the DA's argument. They then decide in your absence, with reference to those cases that's on the Dropbox, whether the requirements are met. One isn't given an opportunity to say, but what about Justice Goliath's decision in Matheson? What about Marais? What about this case and that case? Disputed with reference to case law and address argument. And we would submit that given the serious consequences, that opportunity should have been given. It's not the situation. Well, of course, we don't know what happened and how the FLC decided this. Were they addressed by Ms. Breitenbach? Yes or no? We don't know, because they don't describe the FLC's process at all. All we know is that they have access to this Dropbox, which contained the cases of Andrews, Henderson, and Nolan, and those cases that support the DA's argument.
Did they have access possibly to Matheson as well?
No.
How do we know that? They say, I recall reading somewhere that this was something that was instituted in 2017, and it was circulated to all the members, and it was said we're going to keep a repository of all the cases that may be of interest. Please use this resource. How do we know that that Matheson wasn't there?
Well, my lord, if Matheson was in the Dropbox and they don't refer to it, then clearly it raises a different issue as to whether you just ignored a relevant consideration, because you must deal with the judgment if it's in there. But I think they have given us the link. It's certainly overnight. I will check whether Matheson is in there, but I doubt it.
Well, you can't say it isn't unless you know.
Yes,
and you can't accuse them of being one-sided unless you know that it is so.
But Lord, the point is that if we were given an opportunity to appear there before the FLC and to deal with simple matters, such as, for example, what is the purpose of this clause? Now, I know we could have done it on paper, but you can never have the same level of fairness by putting in paper representations to the main question of why you members didn't cease, as opposed to being there, saying to the members, I can understand what you're thinking, but what about this, that, and the other point?
But Mr. Duval, sorry to interrupt you, but there's a long, strong body of law that says you don't always have to have the right to address a tribunal orally. It all depends on whether you had a reasonable opportunity to make representations. And that
Section 3.3 of PAJA says in serious and complicated cases, I have a right, at least a right, to address the tribunal in person and to make legal representation or arguments.
Was this a serious and complicated case? Is it? So let's it's an audio clip. She says something in the audio clip. They say, there's the audio clip. On the audio clip, you're saying to Mr. McCarthy, you summarize it correctly. I'll walk away from the DA. They say this constitutes an intention to leave.
If I have the time, I'm going to address you quite extensively on why it's far from a simple question. It's far from simple as to whether she contravened 3.5.2.
Well, imagine that if you're going to relieve your mayor from party membership, it is not going to be an easy matter. It must be serious enough.
Yeah. Well, the consequence is serious, and that's what that partial provision is about. It is cases that are serious where page 121, paragraph 3, last sentence. If you submit an audio clip, it shall constitute sufficient proof of such resignation. Not of the declaration, but such resignation. We don't know what to make of it. Where I want to focus is over the page, this strange provision that one finds at 122, paragraph 5. One has 24 hours after having been served with such letter of cessation to provide the chairperson of the FLC, now it says, with clear and unequivocal written reasons why his or her membership did not cease. And if you then go on to page 137, you'll see that the panel actually made something of this at page 137. In respect of De Lille's response to the allegations, it is important to remember that the requirement is that the member must provide clear and unequivocal reasons as to why a membership was not terminated by way of cessation. In this regard, it is important to note that the meaning of clear and unequivocal now is the word free from doubt, incontestable, indisputable, unanswerable, undeniable. This is what my client had to do, according to him. It's a reverse onus that's introduced there. And it says you must present uncontestable evidence, according to him, as to why your membership has not ceased. And he goes on to say this is a heavy burden to refute the allegations made in support of secession is placed on her. I can unfortunately not find that she's met the burden. She hasn't produced uncontestable evidence. So not only are you given 24 hours, without an opportunity to address them orally and be there in person, but it's placed now this reverse onus on one. My learned friends like to refer to the law of contract, obviously. And they want to use by way of analogy, anticipatory breach in the law of contract. But in the law of contract, repudiation or anticipatory breach, the onus remains on the party who alleges the breach. I can't say you repudiated, but I'd like the law to say you must present clear and unequivocal reasons why you didn't repudiate. Otherwise, we accept there was an anticipatory breach. So this is another way in which the stacks are loaded, and it's unfair with respect to introduce a reverse onus. It might be that once I present the clip, that you say, well, there's the evidence. Speaks for itself. But why place that burden on top of it to say, not only does she persuade us that that's not a public declaration of an intention, but it must be clear and uncontestable. That's what they say. Just 2 points that they make is that their heads say, but you may deviate from these rules. We know they're fairly strict and they look a little bit on the harsh side. But you can ask for deviations, and they refer to the FLC rules that start to say that the FLC may deviate. Of course, that's called comfort for someone like Mr. De Lille who wasn't informed. Well, remember, these are the provisions of the FLC rules. Clearly, you can ask for a deviation if there wasn't enough time. Instead, Mr. Vaughan, I'm not going to take you there, page 146, he comes there, as I said, trying to persuade Mr. De Lille to accept this letter of cessation personally, because he says to her, it's important that you've got to answer within the 24 hours. Doesn't mention, well, look, I know the rule says 24 hours, but there's room for deviation, etc. Now on the substantive fairness of it all, this is of course where the rules of natural justice do not apply, and on that we make the following arguments. Moving away now from procedural fairness on the 3 points, then on the substantive points. Firstly, did the FedEx apply its mind to the FLC determination? The Lordship Justice Chair has already pointed or referred to the clause which says that the FLC may or may not confirm the FLC determination. Did they apply their mind? We make the allegation at 322 that they didn't apply their mind. At page 322, paragraph 25, we say that the minutes of the FedEx meeting of 7 May reveals no discussion whatsoever. Instead of a discussion on whether to confirm or to reject, the FLC simply rubber stamped and made reference to these cases that were sitting in the Dropbox. How did they deal with it? At page 410, at the bottom of the page, paragraph 127. There was extensive discussions of both the FLC determination and her representations about whether or not the members agreed with the FLC's panel that clause 3.5.1.2 applied. There's no merit to this. But if one look at page 367,
so on Plascon Evans, we're bound to accept this, are we not?
no, unless, if I could take your Lordship to what the minutes say at page 367, the minutes of the meeting record absolutely no discussion. Now,
Well, that doesn't mean it didn't happen. They may have just recorded the outcome. It often happens in trusts meetings, for example.
it says that the floor was open for discussions, questions, or comment, and then it's got one line about what someone proposed. So, frankly, Mr. Justice Chair, that's not good enough, because the minutes must record at least some of the discussion, or if Mr. Self then wanted to say in his answer, well, look, there were the following discussions. This one raised this. It's not recorded in the minutes, but that one debated. You can't say that statement in light of what the minutes record.
So if I understand the argument properly, in terms of what we've got in front of us on page 254 of the record, where the chairperson say the floor was open for discussion, questions and comments, there's only one by Mr. Thomas Walters.
He proposed that it be accepted. It's completely far-fetched in light of these minutes. Of course, the minutes. So that's our first point, that it was a rubber stamping exercise. Almost, Justice Sher, in the line of what happened in the cruise and the city of Cape Town, and where the recommendation is made on the same day it's adopted by the delegated authority, in that case adopts the recommendation of the BCO on the same day without any, it appears to be no consideration of the matter. Then there's the issue of the inconsistent application. And in our heads
Just
of
before we
argument,
walk off this point, what must we make of this? Must we now come to a conclusion and say, well, there was no proper discussion that taken place?
Yes. It's an untenable on the papers without explaining. It's just a statement that there were these discussions and an application of mine where on the face of those minutes and in the face of the statement that Mr. Lille makes, which is you didn't apply your mind, look at your minutes. To just simply respond by that, by saying that, look, I'm just saying there was, surely it calls then for the opponent to at least say what the nature of the discussions were, etc. But he can't with respect, because as we surmise, there wasn't anything. Now, the next point we make is the question of inconsistent application and how does it fit in? We've referred your Lordships of Lady in the heads of argument to those cases that say inconsistent application is indicative of unreasonableness and bias. That's what the cases say. It's not saying two wrongs make a right potentially, but it's indicative of unreasonableness and bias. Now, if there's just two instances which the DA made no attempt to explain, and the one is the case of Mvenya, that you'll find at 289. I'm not going to take you there, but it's at page 289. It's a clear-cut case that they don't deal with. She resigned, and the newspaper article is saying that this one and that one came to persuade her, and eventually she was persuaded, as Mr. Long, to return to the DA. Of course, nothing happened, and it can't be that if they're consistent, that they couldn't apply this clause 3.5 or 1.2 to Mvenya. Had to. What about Van Damme? There I'd like to take you to 364. And what does she say in the report as report? Because it's an important example. 365. Page 365 on the right-hand side of the column, about the middle of the page. Van Damme het op 'n eerlike, kalme manier gesê, sy sal uit die DA bedank as die party nie die moed het om eerlik vir wit bevoorregting en swart armoede uit te laat. That's what she said. I will resign if this party doesn't have the courage to express itself openly, honestly, about white privilege and black poverty.
But wasn't this in a caucus meeting?
Yes. But the caucus, we say, the caucus, clearly she must have known that this was going to become public. She says it in the caucus meeting. Whether that's public or not is a different debate. But you must know that that statement is going to find its way outside of the caucus as well. And it in fact then does. So it does become a public because someone leaks it.
So the moment it becomes public and it's been printed in the national media,
Yes.
on that score,
It's not
in terms of the
you made
clause.
it public, it is a public declaration.
So in terms of the clause, action should have been taken.
Yes. Well, they can't explain the difference. Then the third point under the substantive point is the reasonableness of itself. And here we are dealing with a decision that is totally disproportionate. And I will get back to it. But reasonableness requires an element of proportionality between what she did and the sanction. And really, the crux of the unfairness here lies therein. That for this slip-up of a statement, even if it did mean that I conditionally want to resign as member of the DA, it's a total overreaction. A total textbook example of the hammer that's used to kill the fly. It is a disproportionate response. And this is why this clause is problematic, because it doesn't really require harm, and in some instances it will lead to the disproportionate response as yet. On the issue of bias,
So is there a need for there to be a proven harm? They say, your colleagues say the reason why we have that there is because the minute people start publicly saying, they're going to resign. We can't trust them anymore. It exposes the party. It endangers potentially the party's political health, because you have someone saying, well, I don't know if I'm going to stay, I might go to the other party.
Justice here can never be right. Not in a conditional declaration. If I say, let's take a few examples. I'm saying that I want to resign when I become 70. Just because what I mean is I'm tired of politics. I want to sit on my stoop and there I want to think about where I'm going to sit next. That's what I want to do for now. What is the harm? What is the harm? Where's the disloyalty? And the same with Mr. Law and Ms. Van Damme. She says, unless you get your act together on this issue of white privilege, I'm going to resign. Where's the disloyalty? Where's his harm they assume he's there? This is something they've made up to say that it's implicit in making such a declaration that I'm disloyal, I want to harm the party. And in Mr. Lille's case, it's the same. She's saying, I will resign, let's assume for the purpose of the argument that is this moment, I will resign once I've cleared my name. What is she saying? I want to use the processes of the party. It's not disloyal. It is saying, I want to use these processes that the party provides to prove that I'm innocent and clear my name. There's nothing disloyal or harmful about it. And Justice Sher, perhaps this is, I'll return to it, but this is the fundamental problem that we're dealing with. Because what the clause's purpose really is not that at all. It's got in mind something else. It is saying that you publicly resign or you publicly declares your intention to resign. All it says is, in those circumstances, you choose not to go through the formalities of coming into the office and handing over a piece of paper, or you're sitting now in Canada and you're never going to come and formally resign in terms of the party's processes. It finds application on those facts. The person who's absent from the school, where there's constructive resignation, you can't find him to get him to resign. And therefore it says after a period, we deem that you resign. It's the same. It is an unconditional, immediate disassociation with the party. Similar as if you come into the office and you formally hands over your letter. It's just that you do that in public. And the clause can be applied, perhaps constitutionally, although I have to be careful, in those circumstances. But it's got nothing to do with harm, and why it doesn't have to do with harm is precisely because harm needs to be proven. Harm needs debate and evidence, and mitigating circumstances potentially. Disloyalty as well. As soon as they want to go, as soon as they want to broaden the clause to say it's not really about this issue of publicly declaring instead of coming into the office to go through the formalities, then they want to attach another purpose, and it scoops up all sorts of innocent situations, and it scoops up within its scope a number of situations where one needs to prove the harm. One needs to say, where is the disloyalty here? Now, of course, that's what they say. They say the purpose is, the clause is to keep members loyal. That's not what the FLC panel found. The FLC panel says the purpose of the clause is to protect the integrity of the membership. I just simply don't know what that means. I don't know whether it means the membership. On the issue of bias, we make the points in our heads of argument that there's Mr. Mohanapa, at least the one person on the FLC panel, at page 26 of our heads, where we say that he's also part of the Joubert panel. He shouldn't have been on this panel. Given that the Joubert panel, we've accused this abusive process, then there's the issue of whether Mr. self and the other 5 that we accused of bias in the founding affidavit ever really accused themselves. And here, there's a strange way of which the papers work, and I'll just refer you to the pages. We initially say at page 43, paragraph 83, Mr. Self and these 4 others should have recused themselves. You shouldn't have been involved in the referral, and you shouldn't have been involved in the final confirmation. Find that at paragraph 83. They respond to paragraph 83 at page 240. They say they did recuse themselves. And bear in mind, this is now the stage of the interim interdict proceedings before they file the record. Oops, the record come out now, they're the only people who in fact participate. Mr. Self, as you've seen now, is the only person who speaks at the meeting. You come back at page 514, you'll see in the further affidavit, and I wants to say, oh, I didn't recuse myself of that panel. In fact, I recused myself of the other panel dealing with the recall clause. But as we know, they never dealt with the recall clause over that weekend. And if you look at those paragraphs, it is 100% clear that we speak in paragraph 83 about recusal from the cessation issue. And he deals with it in terms by referring to the involvement in the cessation. If I can take you perhaps to paragraph 240. Page 240, this is what he says. He's now dealing with paragraph 83. Paragraph 190. I deny that I've been biased against the applicant. The referral to the FLC is in any event a preliminary step. Now we know in the recall clause there's no referral. He's dealing with cessation here. That's why he's dealing with referral. Is in any event a preliminary step. He knows exactly what we're dealing with. And I, in any event, recused myself when the matter was discussed at FedEx. In actual fact, all the members of FedEx who the applicant mentioned previously, and he's saying previously because it was on 2 May, as being biased, recused themselves without acknowledging their any merits. So they themselves admit that they should recuse themselves due to a perception of bias. And then we say, well, look at the minutes, there you all are. And of course, at this stage, they didn't know that they were going to file the record in terms of Rule 53 and that the minutes were going to be filed. Then comes out, now they want to try and do some kind of an egg dance and move over to a different version.
Is there anything else you would like to bring to our attention before we take the adjournment until tomorrow morning? When we give Mr. Rosenberg.
Well, I'm about to move on to the non-compliance with the Constitution. Those are the larger points. So if it's a convenient time.
But how long will you be busy tomorrow? Can you limit yourself to half an hour?
Certainly I'll try.
And then we give Mr. Rosenberg thereafter the opportunity to address us.
I certainly would be grateful if Paddy could limit himself to half an hour to give us some kind of an opportunity in a relatively confined time there.
Good. Court will adjourn until tomorrow morning.
Kan je die kabels in lossen? Die kabels aansluiten.